You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 13. All the World's a Stage.
Welcome back into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm Charlene Schmidt. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of the animated series, discover what makes each of them special, and see if there are any morals, meanings, or messages that we've learned.
This week, episode 13, All the World's a Stage. Now, please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast, so if you haven't seen All the World's a Stage yet, you might want to put this show on pause. We'll wait, and you can watch the episode, and then come back to hear Shar and I talk all about this.
Yes. Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast. So please be sure to engage that like and the share button and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Please, the Roddenberry Entertainment Channel has a lot going on. If you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Come on, man. But you can also listen on podcast.roddenberry.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you want to listen to your Roddenberry podcast, you can get your Roddenberry podcasts. And don't forget, you can also follow Mission Log Prodigy on Twitter at ML_Prodigy, and that way you can keep up on all of our updates there.
Now, before we jump into the recap, as we always do, here's why our podcast is so unique. We want to hear from you. Mostly all of you, but mostly our younger cadets and the Prodigy fans out there who would like to share their thoughts on the show. So please send us, that's you, our younger cadets, please send us our 1 to 2 minute voice message at missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. Dash meaning the dash between those two words, not the word dash. So that is missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. And just like every other show, these are the 4 questions we would love to have you answer. What is your first name and age? Did you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And most importantly, what did you learn?
Yes, we look forward to hearing your comments. We always do. They'll be featured at the end of our show. And to start things off, we've got to do our thing, and that is to answer those questions ourselves. Mm-hmm. So, Norm, did you like the episode?
Okay, so rarely do I ever say this. I'm going to start this off with, this is a bold statement.
Ooh, coming out swinging.
This is a bold statement, swinging.
I like it.
As of right now, as of this episode 13 for Prodigy, this is hands down, by far, my favorite episode of Star Trek Prodigy.
Wow.
And this is why. We're going to get into it in a little bit, but this is why.
Okay.
In a nutshell. Because the original series and Prodigy are my 2 favorite series right now, to date. And this brings these literal 2 furthest apart in real time series together in a very special way. And again, we'll get more into that later. How about you, Shar?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's true, though. This is such a cool, deep cut. I love this episode. It has it all. Mm-hmm. It's got a clever story. It has a deep cut reference to classic Star Trek lore. There is character growth, and there are good morals, messages, and meanings that we will be exploring shortly. So, I mean, this is about as perfect of a Star Trek episode as it gets. How can you not love it?
Mm-hmm. I think so. What was your favorite part, Shar?
Oh, boy. Okay. I think it has to go to when Dr. Boons tells Dal, we know we're not Starfleet, but you don't need a real ship to believe in what it stands for. Mm-hmm. And that was like a big turning point where all the light bulbs come on in Dal's head, I think, where that his confidence comes back, it's restored, and that ultimately helps him keep going, putting one foot in front of the other so that they can complete their mission.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think that you and I are on the same page here. That's kind of my favorite part too. And I think that sometimes in these episodes, our favorite parts are really like the clear morals and meanings or messages parts of these episodes, because that's about as clear of a really good message as you could make for an episode. Yeah.
And it stands out here. So I think that's exactly what we're shooting for as far as this question goes.
Yeah. And okay, the big thing, and I hope that all of our younger listeners come away with something as special as what we've come away with, but what did you learn?
What did I learn?
Mhm.
Well, my what did I learn is that doing good comes from within. It doesn't really matter who you are. If you've got that, it doesn't really matter what sort of a uniform you're wearing or if you've got fancy technology. Those things are great tools to help you, but that's not going to make you do good. That's got to come from here.
Right.
And that is something that the Starflight crew had. That is something Dal and his crew have. So if your heart's in the right place, that's what matters. That was what I learned. What did you learn?
Oh, you have to believe. And I love that Dal said that to Janeway. It's like, you just have to believe. You have to trust us, that we trust the belief in ourselves. You know, all of these things are starting to kind of work together. You know, you have trust, you have the ability to be able to share that with people and make them trust you in return. I think I said this in a couple episodes ago. It's about this trust fall where no matter where they are, it's I got you, right? I got you.
Right.
Right. And
yeah, that's really
important.
not so much an issue with the crew anymore between one another. It's having faith in yourself and believing that you are capable. And sometimes when it's really scary and you're in an unknown situation, you do have to believe. And then you can surprise yourself at how capable you are just because you tried.
Absolutely. And we're going to get more into like that in our deeper discussion points. But for right now, thanks, Shar, for these great answers. And we're going to thank all of our younger cadets for their great answers that they're going to submit that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. So right now, it's time for the recap for Star Trek Prodigy Episode 13, All the World's a Stage, written by Aaron J. Waltke and directed by Andrew L. Schmidt. In the Dauntless Infirmary, Vice Admiral Janeway, Dr. Noom, and Commander Tyces are questioning the diviner. They show him an image of Chakotay, who the diviner immediately recognizes, even though through fractured memories, which frighten him so terribly that Dr. Noom has to sedate him. Lieutenant Essentia arrives with word of Barnes Frex's whereabouts, which Janeway uses to shift her search and rescue mission into a manhunt. Elsewhere on the Protostar, because Jankum can't remove the diviner's weapon, there's no hope of even contacting Starfleet for help. So they decide to help themselves by choosing to help others, starting with answering a distress call from a nearby M-class planet. As Dal assembles his away team, they find Rock nursing a very sick Murph, and Gwyn suggests Rock should stay behind to make sure Murph is okay. After what Dal felt was a bit too long of a beamy part down to the planet, Zero's scanner discovers two life forms who are startled by the away team and stun Jankum with a phaser. Two humanoid aliens dressed in homemade-looking Starfleet uniforms recognizes Dal's away team as Starflight Landing Party. They introduce themselves as James T. and Sul U. Dal immediately contacts Janeway and tells her that there is a Starfleet presence on this planet. She tells Dal that there isn't supposed to be and hasn't been for over 100 years. Until now. Amidst all the confusion, the two alien Starflight officers proclaim that Dal has answered the call. And not the distress call, but the call of end soon. Shortly after, James T. leads his newfound Federation brethren to New Enterprise, a starship-sized village made from leftover containers, scraps of metal plating, and filled with crewmen and women who are oddly dressed exactly like each other. And after introductions are made, James T. insists on playing the logs for their new friends. Logs that have been preserved for this very moment, for when Starflight would return. The logs is a play acted on the bridge, their town square. It is a performance recounting how heroes from space who became the namesakes of these aliens appeared in their great ship, but could not intervene to help them. However, one hero who wore a red shirt fell from the sky to help them. His name, Ensign of Starflight Enterprise, who taught these aliens the ways of Starflight and warned them to stay away from an evil curse called the Gallows, which brought poison to their land. It was Ensign's final wish for these people to preserve these logs and use them to prepare for when Starflight would return. And with the arrival of Dal and his crew, that day has come. Dal, Gwyn, Zero, and Jankum quickly realize that Ensign's first contact encounter went wrong and caused all of this to happen over the past 100 years. Suddenly, a female Enterprisean named Hura bursts through the doors and collapses in Dal's arms. She's just returned from surviving the Gallows, but has contracted the curse, as seen from the dark spots on her skin, which have also spread to Dal as well. If Zero is to find a cure for this disease, they need to know what caused it in the first place, which means that Gwyn and Jankum need Rock to science out what the Gallows curse is really, aside from just being a superstition. However, Rock is still caring for Murph, who is still sick and isn't responding to her treatments. But Janeway promises to look after him so Rock can assist Gwyn and Jankum. Once equipped with protective EV suits, the team heads out to find the gallows deep inside its crystal-filled cave and discover that it isn't a creature at all, but an old 23rd century Starfleet shuttle named the Galileo. Jankum points out that its warp nacelles are damaged and have been leaking fuel for 100 years. Rock also observes that the cave's crystals are dilithium and are reacting with the shuttle's warp plasma fuel, creating the poison which has slowly seeped into the planet's ecosystem. Jankum relays all this information to Zero through the shuttle's communication system, and Zero immediately makes an antidote which instantly cures Hura and Dal. But the danger isn't over yet. Jankum, Rock, and Gwyn are still trapped in the Galileo, which is ready to fall from atop its rocky ledge and into the poison warp plasma lake below. And the Protostar's transporters can't break through the interference from space. It's up to Dal, Hura, Sulu, and Boons to fly the Protostar and save their friends. That is, of course, after a quick holographic interface makeover from the Protostar to a Constitution-class bridge. In the nick of time, Dal and his crew fly through the collapsing cave and beam out Gwyn, Jankum, and Rock, but not before they hear the last log of Ensign Garovic of the USS Enterprise, who crash-landed on this planet 100 years ago. It was he who taught the native people the ways of Starfleet so that he could save them from his terrible mistake, the crash of the Galileo that became the curse of the gallows. After returning the 3 Starflight crew back to New Enterprise, Dal and his crew bid farewell to their new friends, and even though they got a few things wrong, the most important thing is that they got a few things right, and all without having to depend on an actual starship to be able to do the right thing, even reaching the safety of the Federation. And after getting underway for their next mission, Rock returns to the crew quarters and finds, well, Murph, but not really Murph. More of, well, a Murph cocoon? The end.
Woo! Excellent recap. That is a lot happening in one episode.
That's just too much fun to recap, though. It really is.
Well, I couldn't help but notice you put in the James T impression, which is kind of like the impression of an impression of Shatner.
I can't help myself. I really can't. Not when it comes to James T. Kirk. I've been doing that impression for far too long with varying degrees of success, and not nearly as good as what they did here.
Well, can I be honest about something?
Sure.
I was a little torn on whether or not the James T. voice was a little too much. Like, was the exaggeration to almost the point of parody? Kind of like you've seen In Living Color. Sorry, kids, this is an old TV show that starred Jim Carrey. That's a name you might know. He did an impression of Captain Kirk, which was very exaggerated. And this kind of reminded me of that. But you shared an article with me that was an interview with Aaron Waltke, and his rationale for the exaggeration was that as you tell stories over generations, things do become exaggerated.
Right.
So if that's the rationale, then it's delivered perfectly, and I'm 100% cool.
Well, I mean, I think that's a wonderful way of expressing that. And, Aaron, he has such a great affinity towards the original series. And I think that with all of like the different Easter eggs and nods to the original series, imagine, if you will, like you're telling somebody of your favorite TV show or favorite episode or favorite book, and this has gone from generation to generation to generation. Of course, certain things are going to be either elevated or kind of like, or played down, or enhanced or forgotten. And I think that in our fandom, in Star Trek, William Shatner's James T. Kirk has gone through a variety of evolutions, one of which being parody. So you can't help but, feel the parody of a parody of a parody of a parody in D. Bradley Baker's performance as James T., who I thought D. Bradley Baker did a phenomenal job of making you feel like it was a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yes. Yeah. With that intent now known, he nailed it.
Yeah. And I have to before I get into any further observations, I have to just basically lump all of my love for every single reference of the original series into just one. I loved all the references of the original series observation, because if I don't, we'll never get done with the show.
It's true. We could talk all day, and I wish we could, because then we'd give them all the attention they deserve. But yeah, for the sake of time, let's condense them.
The big references, though, I think that are original series references, but done and spun in this particular way. The Vulcan salute, it's not quite right. Certain things, the uniforms aren't quite right. A lot of like the original series references are done in a way where it tells you this story of how the logs are used to preserve this story over time.
Yeah, how they were interpreted and how I love the schema of it all. Like, what they're talking about, even though it's just a little bit off, which is great because we know we have new fans watching this show, and they might not necessarily know exactly the tricorder or the Vulcan salute, but at the same time, like, you get the gist.
Yeah. And
so that's really good.
And I think that there's obviously a way where it looks newer because it's animated, but it's definitely like the references look newer. The bridge, the way they used the play, the way they used all of the different interpretations of the original series era, all of the details. And they're all not exactly 100% perfect to like the 1966 to 69 era, but they are referencing that era of Starflight, right?
Starflight.
That earlier era that these characters come from.
Sure. And it looked beautiful, did it not? Everything from the bridge, when the Protostar becomes a Constitution class bridge so that the Enterprise crew can work the consoles. My favorite visual, though, might have been the reveal of the Galileo.
Yeah.
As the gallows. Like, oh my gosh, that's so smart.
Was there anything that was telegraphed for you? Like you knew what the reference was? Because that's how I felt about the gallows. I'm like, it has to be the Galileo because of all of the different references that were done from the original series.
I wasn't that smart. I didn't pick up on it until the reveal, but then that's why it was such a moment, was like, how genius is that? Yeah, gallows, Galileo, the tuna cells being the glowy eyes. Yeah.
It was so perfect. Absolutely so perfect. But that's what happens when you have like, I'm not gonna unfairly say this, but about Aaron's love for the original series, but there is a little bit of an obsession there about being an obsession.
I see what you did there. Well, let's talk a little bit about the episode where the character of Garevik comes from. It's called Obsession. It's in season 2 of the original series. Mm-hmm. And for basically preparation for this show, I rewatched the episode Obsession just to see if there's things in there that we should know about Garevik that might make the story more complete. Does it give us some more context? I came away with, no, you really don't have to. If you want to, by all means, go for it. It's an interesting episode. But for this here, you're going to gain what you need to know all the same, whether you recognize the name or not at all. And right. That's pretty smart.
Yeah, when you're dealing with bringing like these references like from these, I would say, less known episodes of the original series, because most in the Star Trek community and in general Star Trek fandom, they know kind of like the top 10. You're at the Trouble with Tribbles and the Doomsday Machine, and Mirror Mirror. But an episode like Obsession, fantastic episode, and has this character who we'll talk about a little bit later, Garevik, who is kind of like where Dal is in this situation.
Yes.
I do love that. I know that this is a love letter to the original series, but then again, in Star Trek in general, so was a movie from 1999 called Galaxy Quest. And I
see some parallels there.
I have to bring this up because when I was watching this episode, the Enterpriseians reminded me a lot of the aliens in Galaxy Quest, where they used in that movie, the TV show Galaxy Quest was beamed out into space. And then these very smart aliens who are really good at mimicking things, they built their entire culture on this TV show. And it felt very similar to where they were going with the new Enterpriseians, with them watching the historical tapes of how to do the bridge controls in that very same way. So I love that there are so many different layers for this episode, not just from Star Trek, but from other fandoms out there that also showed their love for Star Trek as parody, just like Galaxy Quest. Yeah.
Sure. That's a much better comparison than what I came up with, which was fan films. A lot of people have made their own costumes and made their own sets, and they might not be completely up to the exact spec because they don't have the budget or the resources of a studio, but they make their own fan films, and it comes from this place of just love and appreciation that's bigger than just being a TV show.
I think that's fabulous. I think that's an absolutely perfect point to make, because there is a scene where Dal is talking to Gwyn, and it's like, look, their costumes aren't right, and what they're playing at make believe. They're playing at a lie, and I know that lie isn't the word that we want to use, because in the end, we're all playing at something better, and we're going to get to that in a second in our discussion. But it's true that, we all do our best to either, wear the fandom that we love in either a way where we can buy it off the rack or make it ourselves. But in the end, it's just another way of expressing this ideal that we're trying to uphold, that we're trying to promote. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that Dr. Boones even confessed, like, we know that this isn't exactly right, but that's not the point. It's because we want to believe. Yeah. And isn't that fandom? It's just wanting to believe in this more hopeful future as far as Star Trek is concerned.
Well, let's jump right into that, Char. Then this is our because I think that's a great discussion point to start off with. Let's
go for it.
It's about belief, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, and anything that you hold to a higher ideal can be your belief, whether it is your faith, whether it is a society, or if it's a fandom. It's all kind of the same thing. It helps you aspire to be more, to be better, to help you grow and change and learn. I want to spin that off into what we sometimes do on the Mission Log main show, and it's called the title game.
And for those of you who play the home game, you're keeping score. This is one of the few references that I actually bring up as title game, because this comes from a Shakespearean play or a Shakespearean title called All the World's a Stage. It comes from a poem about how we as real people spend our lives playing and play acting at different parts through our life. Just like Dal and his crew start realizing earlier on in this episode, when they're looking at the Enterpriseians, that maybe they are all playing at being Starfleet, and they're all playing acting at being this greater version of themselves. But why is that such a bad thing? It's not necessarily a bad thing if you're doing it for the right reasons. I think that's what Boones is trying to say. Yeah,
I agree. And the difference maybe is where you're just playing and you're faking it versus, no, this is real and we can actually do some real good.
And you don't really need the legitimacy, I should say, of the ship or the uniforms or the tools, or I think more importantly, the permission to do that, to do the right thing. If you feel in your heart that it is, in fact, the right thing. At the very beginning of this episode, Dal said, well, we can't bring the Protostar to Starfleet, but we can bring the Protostar to other planets because we want to do what Starfleet does. We want to help people who need help.
Right.
Whose permission did they get? No one's.
No. And the Protostar is just a tool to make that happen.
Right. And sure, they're wearing the uniforms because it makes them feel like they're part of this larger organization that they want so desperately and so badly to be a part of, just like the Enterpriseians did or do on that planet. So are they really play acting at it? And if they are, where is the harm in that if that's giving them a purpose?
Well, and I think this is both for Dal and Jankum Pog, a reawakening of their belief and their confidence in that they are not imposters. They really aren't. They are doing the work. They are doing the good deeds. And in this episode, they both go on that journey. By the way, it was nice to see Jankum Pog get a little more screen time, wasn't it?
That was really important to me. And I've said this before. I even said it to the Hagemans, Dan and Kevin, when they were on one of the interviews. I said this to Aaron on another interview. I said, when are we going to get more Jankum Pog? Because Jankum he was nice to have there as kind of like a, comedic relief. But what he says actually really does have some merit to it, has some meaning to it. And I think I think that he's been trying to find a way to help. Zero was able to have their moment when they healed Gwyn last episode, with the Borg. And Zero was able to sacrifice themselves in a way to do that. Jankum hasn't been able to do anything. He hasn't been able to affect the weapon. He hasn't been able to he wasn't able to do anything on the Borg cube. He's felt kind of useless.
Yeah.
But now he's been given that chance to feel like he's contributing. I think that they all want to in their own ways, but they all feel a little helpless in their own ways too. And maybe that also adds to the imposter syndrome.
Right. And for Jankum, he's an engineer. His job, his purpose is to fix things. And like you said, he's not had a whole lot of success doing that lately. So it's been frustrating for him. And here is another opportunity where you could succeed, you could fail, but darn it if he's not going to try. And all those tools right in that head, baby. I loved that line.
That's the great thing about focusing on Jankum again, because he knows that it's either going to get fixed or it's not. It's either fixed or broken. Right?
Yeah. There's no halfway.
No. And if he has to beat something into shape and he has to force like a round peg or a round square in a round hole, or a square peg in a round hole, that thing, he's going to do it. But at least he knows that he's fixed something, right. But if he can't do anything about it, then I think he feels like, what am I doing on this ship? And you can apply that to pretty much any member of the crew. And I think that's where I want to kind of circle back to Ensign Garrovick and the episode Obsession. And I do agree with you, like watching Obsession then as a reference to All the World's a Stage isn't necessarily required, but it does give you an understanding of the two main characters in both episodes. You have Dal, who's at a point of crisis, in his leadership. Do I actually really belong here? And then Garrovick in Obsession, he's also like, well, I don't, after Captain Kirk has had several issues with his performance, even Garrovick's like, what am I doing on this ship? I'm not really making that much of a difference, no matter how much I think I am. So you can see that there's a little bit of a parallel with these two young, passionate idealists who want to do something for the right reason, but they're almost getting in the way of themselves.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah. That's definitely the case for Dal. And for Garrovick, it's a nice notable thing that he was the lone surviving red shirt in the episode Obsession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's just, a lot of times when you're a red shirt on the original series, things do not work out well for you. So it's actually a very cool continuation of his backstory that you do get in Obsession. And then the whole thing with the Galileo, and ultimately mirroring once again, Dal does the right thing. Garrovick did the very best thing he could, which was to try and give these folks on the planet the tools that they needed to eventually repair what he broke, fix the damage.
So here's a question for you and for all of our audiences out there. So there is this aspect of, does wanting something so badly make you believe the right and wrong reasons for doing things? Dal has a couple of very interesting lines that I thought were like, they were telling. He said, these people are living a lie and don't even know it, just like us. But he kind of says that underneath his breath to Gwyn.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has this look where he's kind of admitting to himself, like, okay, I thought, that I was in the right, and I believe that what I'm doing is just, and I'm doing it in the way that Starfleet would do it. But then I look at these people, and they're reminding me that they're just basically a cheaper copy of what we're doing. So if they're doing it for these reasons and we're doing it for these reasons, neither of these reasons are actually legitimate. They're real. They're not real. Right.
Yeah.
But why does that matter? Why does that, where do you think his self-doubt is coming from?
I think it comes from he's had just enough experience now, and they've all gone through so much in a short amount of time to he knows what he doesn't know. So he's not completely inexperienced anymore. He knows the weight of command. He knows now the responsibility of leadership and is doing his very best. But like you noted, he kind of wakes up after he's cured from the the burn mark sickness, whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
And he yells, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's like the truth coming out. He is just kind of trying to do his best as he goes along. But here's the big secret is we are all doing that in all of our lives all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to work out things as we go. The experience helps inform you to do better and bigger and new things all the time. But when you're young and inexperienced, oh man, I would not want to go through it again. Let's put it that way. It's difficult. It's awkward. And you really just feel like, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. You have to find out.
And some people are better at play acting that part than others.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, where sometimes people will look like they know what they're doing. The truth is they don't. They don't know any more than you.
Right.
And yeah, just keep going. Keep going.
So I have one obsession, pardon the pun, but it is true. I have one obsession with this episode, and it's because there are so many different layers to this one line that the more I think about this line, the more layers I find. You must play the logs. You must play the logs. And it's not because of the way that it was performed. It's like, you must play the logs, like the whole James T. Kirk thing, right? Because playing the logs, so it's a play on play the logs of Ensign's story.
Uh-huh.
You must play the logs means also that you must perform the oral tradition, and in doing so, show that to these Federation brethren that we've preserved everything that we've learned from this one source, from Ensign Garrovick. But it leads to this other thing called the kind of like the mistelling of one of the most famous lines in Star Trek: "Live long and prosper," to "live logs and proper." But I thought that was interesting because in the way I interpret it, if you live the logs, and the logs are the play based on the oral tradition of Garrovick's belief in Starfleet, that means that if you live them, you learn by their morals. And if you live properly by them, then that's a way that guides you throughout your life. So live the logs and proper. Does that make sense?
Genius, isn't it? Man, Aaron Walke, can I just get into your brain a little bit and see this genius at work? I really wanted to believe, as of Thursday when this episode came out, that he had so much of the story like already mapped out after years and years and years of thinking about it, only to find out that no, it happened in real time in the writer's room with everybody contributing. And that just goes to show how incredibly intelligent and well thought out and knowledgeable about Star Trek this whole writing staff is.
Yeah. It's, I think it's a testament to, obviously wanting to tell their own story. But I think that the writer's room knows that there are 50, probably at the time of writing this episode, there were 56 years of history behind what they're doing, the news stories that they're trying to put forward now in real time as of 2022, going into 23 and finishing up the back half of this season. Well, it technically should have been already finished up by now, by this recording. But all that aside, there is a point where I think in order to capture kind of like the imagination of audiences across these, 5+ decades, there are going to have to be these callbacks to bridging the story from, the original series to now, or maybe all these different bits in between. That's why the 2 episodes that Aaron is responsible for writing were the Kobayashi episode, which was episode 6, I believe, and then this episode. So those 2 episodes themselves have been probably the truest love letter, Easter egg filled callbacks in Prodigy so far. And I think that it's nice to have them every once in a while. And even with Kobayashi, it wasn't just the original series, although Spock, who also used a very prominent line from Obsession in Kobayashi, was a big reference point, to how important like the Starfleet mission is now, with his wisdom, with Sprock's wisdom.
Yeah. The love letter really is the word here.
Truly.
It comes from a place of such love.
We have a couple more minutes here, Shar, and we're going to start wrapping things up. So what did we learn from this episode? And do we have any other final discussion points that we may have thought up during the course of our discussion?
Yeah, I got one.
Mm-hmm.
So last week, we left off in a really good, kind of heartwarming place where everybody's like, yeah, we're going to do good. And that was the ideal. And this week we're dealing with the reality of that setting in. Because at first I thought it might have been a little jarring, like, oh, doll, why are you so shaky in your confidence? But it's because that reality is sinking in and he's feeling imposter syndrome. And I think just like the crew, got swept away in the idea of what they were doing. And now that we're actually doing the work, that work is hard. Carrying out an idea is much harder than coming up with the idea. The idea is easy. Mm-hmm. Making it happen is hard. So I think kind of to wrap up my thoughts is I am just really impressed and I've really enjoyed this crew's resilience. It's tough to keep going when you don't have confidence in yourself, but that's exactly what Dahl did. That's what Jankum did. Rock Talk has never stopped trying to help Murph, whatever is going on there. So they are doing the work, and I just don't think they realize how good of a job they really are doing. They're constantly facing new and scary situations, gaining experience from that. And in such a short time, they've won some and they've lost some, which is good. That's realistic. Mm-hmm. So it's healthy. And I think that's a great thing to show everybody in our audience. And I think as long as our kids keep going, they're going to keep growing and be just fine.
You know, I love that. I think that if for anything, this episode it's reinforcing the point that as long as you trust and believe and you're doing things for the right reason, all of these building blocks are starting to come together, which kind of brings me to a point that we haven't really discussed yet. And, in my final notes, we've already talked about Jankum and how this has probably been the closest thing to kind of a focused episode for Jankum. And I like that he was trying to contribute and fit in and do something constructive and positive with an outcome that he can live with. But I need to do something. I need to kind of bring up the opening scene of this episode with the Dauntless, with Janeway, with the Diviner, and how Janeway she's shifted a mentality, I think, or at least those scenes are showing us the more adult, serious, and driven side of Starfleet. Prodigy up to this point, until we started getting Janeway and the Dauntless, it's been a tone of sorts, where you're dealing with the children and you're dealing with the nurturing Janeway, and you're dealing with all of them coming together as a family and trusting each other. And we're all finding that great warmth and that blanket of love, and all of that's happening. And we're all in it there. We all understand that tone. But now you have the beginning of these episodes with the Dauntless and the Diviner, and how he's starting to remember these really extreme memories. And now Janeway's like, I want these people found and I want them brought to justice. This is a manhunt. She's using very serious adult terms. How do you think that's impacting some of maybe our younger audience?
I don't want to answer for them. I think they'll answer that question for themselves. I can tell you what I think, though, which is we know that moment of reckoning is coming. There will be a moment when Admiral Janeway catches up with the Protostar, and what is going to happen from there? It's a little scary to think about because it doesn't seem like it's going to be good, at least not for our kids, because right now, Admiral Janeway is talking to the Diviner, and he's telling her one part of a story, and that's all she has to work with right now. She doesn't know the full story, but we do. Mm-hmm. And so it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your brain. I'm so glad you brought it up, too, because it is just that very short scene in the very beginning, and then we forget all about it and almost forgot about it for the show. So thank you.
Well, it's and I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, because I know it's very difficult. It's difficult to answer a question, from an adult, to our younger viewers. And there's obviously an infinite amount of ways people are going to respond to it. But I have to believe that somewhere along the line, maybe there's going to be a certain portion of our audience, and maybe with the younger viewers, I'm not completely 100% for sure, but because our heroes are the kids, and everything around them is kind of like, they're the adult side of the equation, are kind of like the antagonists or villains. Will we get to that point where Vice Admiral Janeway, who is this paragon of Starfleet, and for the adults who have lived with her through Voyager and lived with her career and understand what she's done in the world of Star Trek, this character now is going to become a villain to some.
Yes, that's the whole idea, isn't it? And for us who know Janeway, we know that's not the truth, but this is how it looks when this is what you know.
And we're getting to that point where I think these worlds are starting to collide, and the distance between them is getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And there's this great set of graphics. This is the last thing I want to bring up. There's this great set of graphics where it's Team Janeway on the Protostar with Dal and his crew. And then there's Team Vice Admiral Janeway on the Dauntless with her crew. And they're side by side. And you just kind of look at them and say, what is going to happen when these two crews meet?
Yeah, it's going to be explosive. I know that. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how that plays out, because I do want to believe in my heart that Admiral Janeway, she might come off at first as the bad guy, but she's really not. And we're going to see the process of that happening.
Well, we have 7 episodes left, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we've still got way too much time, which is a good problem to have right now as far as Prodigy is concerned. I want all the Prodigy.
Well, that's it for our show, Shara, so let's wrap things up.
All right. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you've enjoyed our show, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Mission Log Prodigy on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel or on your podcast catcher of choice. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, production and technical direction by the fabulous Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is on missionlogpodcast.com. And if you would like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thanks, everyone, for taking the time to be with us, and we look forward to sharing our thoughts with you on episode 14 next week. And I'm going to turn the mic over to James T. And now, as we do with each and every standard episode of Mission Log Prodigy, we'd like to leave you all with these very special incoming transmissions.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
What's your name?
Dietrich.
How old are you?
4.
Did you like the episode?
Yeah.
What was your favorite part?
Them figuring out how the poison got to the outside world.
Yeah, and figuring out the way to cure the people who are sick.
Yeah.
And what did you learn from the episode?
I learned that there's always hope.
Great. I enjoyed watching the episode with you.
Thanks, Mom.
All right. What's your name and your age?
Rook. I'm 7.
Okay. Rook, what did you like today's episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part?
When they beamed Walktech, Jenkinpog, and Gwyn.
Yeah, you liked when they rescued him?
Yes.
All right. And what did you learn from the episode?
Sometimes you have to just let people have a go, even if they do stuff just a little bit wrong.
Yeah, give them a shot?
Yeah.
It might surprise you? Cool.
My name is James. I am 10, and I love the episode. My favorite part was when, at the end, when Murph turned into a butterfly, probably. And what I learned is just never judge a book by its cover.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.